welcome back to the Bold Moves podcast. We are so glad that you are joining us today. We're off to the races doing another episode. You guys feeling good? Ready to dive in?
Let's go.
Yeah. Today we're kicking off a new series, really. At Crossroads, we're walking through a series called Unnecessary Censorship. And so for the next few podcasts, we're going to be talking about some things that people don't necessarily like to talk about. They can create a little bit of conflict, create a little bit of unease. Do you guys lean into the conflict or do you go away? Oh, Kristen leans into it. Do you avoid it or do you lean into the conflict, Corey?
Conflict. I'm probably a little bit non-conflict as much as possible.
Kristen, you're like, let's go. Let's dive in.
Well, I mean, we'll see what you got.
Okay. I used to be much more conflict avoidant than I am now. I don't know what changed in me over the years, but now it's like, let's go, whatever we need to do.
But people who are joining us at Crossroads for this series, they don't have to actually be part of the conflict. They just get to listen to it.
That is absolutely correct.
These are the conversations people want to talk about.
That is
they
true.
Just don't want to say they want to talk
That's
about it.
exactly right. That's exactly right. So at first blush, this is one of those things where you go, wait a second, what's so conflicting about this topic? Why is this so offensive to people? And the reality is what we're talking about out of the gate is this idea of our origin. Like, where do I come from?
Sure.
And that's the question that everybody asks themselves at some point in life when you're, laying there in bed at night thinking about all of the mysteries of life. I don't know if that's true for everybody. That's when I find myself thinking about the deeper things in life sometimes when I can't sleep. And it's grappling with the reality that all of this began somewhere. It came from something, and it's grappling with the reality of what does that look like? What is that? What does that mean? And at the end of the day, nobody can say definitively, oh, this is how it began. It's all, no matter what side of the aisle you fall, whether you believe that we were created by an amazing God who loves us with an extravagant love, or whether you evolved from the muck of primordial ooze and became a human today. Isn't that what it's called? Primordial ooze? I think.
I've never heard that term in my life.
I think that's the scientific term that they use. The primordial
I'm going to trust you on that one.
But regardless, it's no matter which side of the coin that you fall on there, you have to believe what you're holding to be true as you have to take it by faith. Like, really, nobody likes to think about that. Whether you believe in God or not, it takes faith to think about where you come from. And it matters because here's where it gets tricky. If you really, truly believe that our origin is just a cosmic accident, like it was a big bang, there was an explosion, something happened, and over millions and billions of years, here we are. Then you have to grapple with the fact that if that is all there is, if we really are a cosmic accident, then life on Earth as we know it, it truly is completely meaningless. It is totally insignificant. It lacks any kind of purpose. And so your origin, like what you believe about where you come from, it matters, I think, way more than people think. Do you have any thoughts? Any initial comments onto that point right there?
I think there's probably some people that spend a lot of time thinking about that. I tend to be on the other side, but I guess in my mind, I was raised in the church and I've kind of always instinctively gone to the, hey, God existed and he created all of the things that exist here now. So it's sort of like was already answered for me. So I don't know. Like I've never actually, I can't say that I've ever been in that position where I feel like I was actively trying to figure out which side of the line I'm going to fall on. So I don't know. I don't know how people kind of end up there. What they think about.
Yeah, I'm kind of like you, Corey. I'm just trying to get in the mindset of someone who doesn't believe in God or creation, and if it's all meaningless, then what are you doing with your life? If you have kids, if you have a family, if you have people that you care about, like what's their point? What's the point of any of it?
Right.
And honestly, that makes it sound like maybe we aren't intellectual and don't think about that kind of thing, which may have some truth.
We're being intellectual right now, Corey.
Maybe there's a little
being intellectual.
But honestly, for me, like I think there's enough evidence. Like it's not like I ever just like sat down and thought, okay, which side am I going to end up on? I think there's enough evidence though to support, even if you choose never to open a Bible, to support that there's somebody somewhere, some kind of being that created all of what we have here, rather than some accident. Honestly,
I absolutely agree. I had the absolute displeasure about 15 years ago of going through that bodies exhibit. Do you know what I'm talking about? It travels around. It's like in different museums of science and industry around the country. the bodies museum is actual like bodies of people who are obviously dead. It's like old cadavers. They've taken them apart and they just like do a deep dive into every part of the body and look at it. It's actually very disorienting.
Yeah, I don't like this.
It's awkward. It was not great. But the reality is, as you walk through this exhibit, which is very unnerving, I'm not going to lie. Like, oh my, I didn't. Oh, so that's what a tumor looks like. It's disgusting. The reality is, though, as you walk through like just the human body, it's impossible. It is impossible to look at that and go, oh yeah, that's just an accident. Like there's such intricate design.
Right.
Yeah,
everything has
sure.
such a specific function and purpose. It's crazy, to your point, Corey, to think, oh yeah, this is all just an accident. If you're right, if you never opened a Bible, I think what the Bible says is true. The heavens declare the glory of God. Like he reveals himself in the very nature and the creation that we live in.
Yes.
Like, yeah. So it becomes at least obvious to me. I don't know, from the seat I sit in.
That's how I feel. And I think it even goes beyond just like creation. Is this planet that we live on, did it happen by accident? Are you an accident? Like it goes beyond that. Like God creates things with order in mind.
Yes.
And so like you can see that even in just like how we live together. Something as simple as how do humans and animals reproduce? There is male and there is female, and there is one thing that works with another thing, and it creates another thing.
I don't know what you are talking about. You're going to have to explain this more. I don't know what's happening.
He'll tell you later.
Okay.
When you're old enough to understand.
I'm old enough to understand. Thank you.
But honestly, like that's not, those kinds of things aren't accident. To me, it's not accidental.
Yes.
It doesn't just happen.
Yeah, there's order, there's design.
For sure.
And I guess what I've really grappled with over the last probably decade of my life, when I've really thought about this, is I've always had the perspective growing up of just the kingdom perspective. I grew up believing in God, believing that He created everything, and I never really thought about how that impacted my overall life. And the reality of that is what you believe about your origin. It has significant impact on every other aspect of your life. And I think that's the part that nobody likes to talk about, because if you don't believe in God, and to be clear, in our culture and our education system, basically we do everything we can to just ignore God at every possible turn.
Right.
When you do that, it really does take away every source of possible significance, meaning, or purpose to life. And that's not how God created us to live. God has created us for so much more. And I have been wildly intrigued over the last few years, especially as you see the science begin to develop of us looking into the universe and just seeing the vastness, like how it's eternal. We talked about this a little bit in the last episode. It's just hard to grapple with the idea of eternity, but we're in it. And to see like just the creation that God has made. I think we've got a video that kind of shows some of the pictures from the Hubble telescope that have been taken over the last few years.
This is the Euclid telescope.
Oh, it's the Euclid. That's right. It's the Euclid. We went with Euclid. And to be clear, this is how intellectual we are. Full disclosure, we actually asked Google, how do you pronounce Euclid? Just to make sure. Euclid.
It should be clear, but you just never know.
You just never know. You never know.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, look at these pictures as it goes through the universe. I mean, you start to realize just the absolute vastness of the galaxy, of the universe, and everything beyond. And it's just what we can see. Like, this is all that we can see from from two telescopes. How about that? The Euclid and the Hubble.
If you're watching the podcast and you're able to see the images of all of this,
it's like incredible.
Each individual tiny little pixel speck on the video is a star in a galaxy somewhere. And it's just, when you think about like all of the stars that form together to show the colors and the lights, and it's absolutely
it's
insane.
Unbelievable. Yeah. It's unbelievable. And to think that that's all that we can see, and we can see so far, it's like millions and billions of light years away.
Yeah.
And to even try to wrap your mind around how far away that is and how small we are in all of that. Like, man, I feel like sometimes the world revolves around me. Like, it's crazy. Like, nothing revolves around me.
The world is very big.
Not even close, yeah.
Yes. So it's just wild to think about the vastness of creation and how vast and powerful the God must be that created that, right? Mm-hmm. And to believe that the God who created the universe is a God who loves us and created us it brings a whole sense of purpose and meaning to your life that I don't think you can find anywhere else. And I think it's worth talking about the fact that if you believe God's word to be true, and I do, I'm a pastor, that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. I think you guys both believe God's word is true. Is that accurate? You can affirm that?
Turns out I do.
How about that? All right, so we're on the same page here. So if you believe that to be true, then that changes everything about your origin. You are not some cosmic accident. No, actually, the opposite is true. You are actually created in the image of God. Yeah. He formed us out of the dust of the ground. He breathed into us the breath of life, and he created you with a purpose. Your life has meaning. He created you to have a future. And it's extraordinary to think about how different life looks like from those two different starting points. That's why the topic of your origin is so significant. Because if you're starting from the place where I believe I am fearfully and wonderfully made by God, He loves me and there's nothing I can do about it, or I'm a cosmic accident, my life has no purpose, my life has no meaning. Yeah. It takes you to completely different areas in life. Yeah, it matters.
To take it even a step further, like the Bible tells us that we each have unique individual gifts that we've been given by God. And I think that like in the journey of discovering those things is exactly like where the magic happens for your life, where you can where you can start to learn this is my purpose because this is how God has made me. This is how He's created me. And, you know, honestly, we talk about like serving at Crossroads. That's one of the things we want to help people do is find, if you don't know, find out what those gifts are in your life and put them to use. And we've got like different serving teams that are at least one avenue to help you put your gifts to use so that you can contribute back to what God has made and created you to be.
So here's what drives me crazy that I see in our culture today that are outcomes of having these different perspectives. And this is where we get into some difficult. This is where it gets a little. Well, we have some issues here.
Watch
some
out for the confrontation.
Yep, that's right. Look out. What was that? What was that?
It was a stink bug.
It was a stink bug.
And it went right for you.
Oh my! I was just attacked on the podcast. I was attacked by a stink bug.
Careful what we talk about on here because you just never know.
I have no idea where it is. If you guys see it crawling up my shirt, you better tell me. Oh my goodness, that happened. We're not deleting this. We're keeping this on the podcast. I was attacked by a stink bug during unnecessary censorship. Things are going crazy. That's right. Look out. That's right. Look out.
Is it a plague? Are there stink bugs coming for all of us?
I think that stink bug has conflict with you.
It does not like where we are going with this.
Oh my word. That was something. Okay.
I saw it out of the corner of my eye. I was like, I feel like I had really great reflexes. I'm not going to lie. I feel like I have cat-like reflexes. I felt really good about my response.
Yeah, you had at least a 2-second response time there.
Unbelievable. Okay, so back to the thought. I've actually can't believe I'm still focused on the thought that I had. The conflict that comes out of this, that is the fallout in our culture today, is because so many people no longer believe in God. So many people have bought into this lie that I am a cosmic accident. The fallout is it changes your entire perspective. Whereas if I put my trust in Jesus, I believe that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made in His image. That gives me identity. That gives my life purpose. That gives me hope. I have a future. And right now in our culture, you see that people are struggling in all three of those areas. And that's because their life has no significance and they're struggling to find all of those things. I mean, you think about the identity crisis that we're having in our culture today. People are looking and searching everywhere to try to find their identity. And it makes me sad to see people searching for their identity and trying to find that in anything else that comes from God, because it's never going to be enough. It's never going to fulfill that void in their soul. They're not looking in the right place. The search for purpose. People are desperate to know that their life has meaning, that what they're doing matters. And Jesus gives us that. And the hope that we have for a future. You guys, that never becomes more obvious than when you're celebrating the end of someone's life. And it sounds weird to say that, but I, as a pastor, I'm doing funerals from time to time and officiating funerals, and I'm there when you actually stop and think about the life that was lived, celebrating a life that was well lived, and during the really awkward funerals where, no one shows up and they don't really have much good to say about that. But you see both sides of that, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is those are the times where you experience the importance of hope. And you only experience that when your worldview is correct, when you have put your trust in God.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like you talk, thinking about funerals, I've often had like conversations with myself, just kind of thinking, I don't know how you deal with loss on that significant level.
Yeah.
If you don't have that faith and that like rock solid foundation in God to know that it's not the end of everything.
Yes.
Honestly, that's where I land on that.
Oh yeah. 100%. I was just actually coaching one of our staff members. I'll let them remain nameless. It was Anthony Senecal. I was coaching Anthony. He's doing his first funeral service here. It's just a sad situation, but it was his first funeral. And I'm coaching him through it. Like, how do you do that? Because it's a little bit intimidating the first time you do that. It's a serious moment. You don't want to screw that up. So I had a dry erase board, and he had some interns and some people he's training in the room. So I wrote it on the dry erase board: how to not screw up a funeral, Anthony. And I gave him like the overview. And what's great about it is, again, when your worldview and your perspective is, I've put my trust in God. I believe that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I believe that my identity is found in Him. I have purpose and I have hope. It changes everything because what we do is we're able to build that funeral service, that ceremony around the idea that, yes, we grieve what is lost. We celebrate what was good, but then we get to hope for what is to come.
Absolutely.
It is not the final goodbye. We have this hope that Jesus gives us, and that changes everything. And I want to encourage, if it's you guys or anyone who's watching, what you believe about Jesus, what you believe about your origin, like where you come from, it's more significant than you realize. And I think sometimes we're too hesitant to kind of give into the talking points, and talk about it. Like, do you believe in creation? Do you believe in God?
Yeah.
It's like, yes. You feel weird because everybody in culture is saying the opposite, right? Sure. Well, I believe in science. Well, what does that mean? Like, I love. There's a couple comics that do some bits on that, like the differences in evolution, and it makes me chuckle when they point out some of the incongruencies. There's a guy I saw this clip recently that made me chuckle. Let's all laugh together for a minute. This is pretty funny.
Let's watch this.
Yeah, this is good.
I remember when I was a kid, they never let me ask any questions. The teacher would be like, all right, boys and girls, everybody open up your books, page 52. All right, kids, look at the diagram. Check this out. A long, long time ago, all of us in here used to be monkeys, right? Then we turned into this Chewbacca circus carnival freak show looking thing, but now we're all people. Next chapter, move on, no questions.
That is how it goes.
Well, accurate. I had questions. How come monkeys are the only animals that were ever allowed to turn into people?
Good question.
How come there's no two-legged giraffe with a short neck walking around vaping? Because it ain't real.
A valid point.
Not to mention the fact we still got monkeys.
Right.
So true.
They're not changing.
Oh, that's fantastic.
What, that guy used to be a friggin' duck?
Okay.
You know how they kind of say each person looks a little bit like some kind of animal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's kind of what it reminds me of. But
that's so good. We have fun laughing at that stuff, but the reality is, it's all a theory, right? Everybody who believes in creation or believes in evolution, whatever side of the fence you fall on, you still have to have faith in the beginning of that story.
Well, and we're saying that from the Christian perspective,
yes.
Right? I mean, I've got to have faith that God is the one who made the earth and made everything that's part of all of this, because I wasn't there. So I actually didn't witness it happening. Right. I think the evidence is overwhelming.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll share a little bit that I went through a slight identity crisis. Shortly after my first child was born, I got so wrapped up in being his mom. I felt like I was just Noel's mom everywhere I went. And I didn't ever hear my name. And I started reading a book. And I was like, I need to know like who I am again, because that's not like I have all of these roles in life, but who am I? And I was reading a book and it was like, you need to strip down every label or relationship that you are. Like, you're not just a mom, you're not just a wife, you're not just a sister or a friend, and I got down to like, okay, if I'm none of those things, if no one else existed, who am I? And I'm this child of God, and I had to own that origin, because like that happens at your funeral. Like you have all these people. That was my cousin. That was my mom, or that was my dad. Like whoever it was. But who are you past that?
Yeah.
You know, like when you're
at
gone,
the deepest level.
Yeah. Who are you, and where's that origin at?
That's fantastic. What did you? I mean, can we talk? Can we dive into that for a second?
Sure.
That's a fantastic insight. So you went through that process and just figuring out your identity. Like, now let's talk about that. You realized, okay, when you strip that down to its most important base, that is the idea that you are a child of God. How did that impact you? I mean, when you had that realization, that must have been a moment because you're remembering it and reflecting on it right now. How did that change things?
It just, it brought me a lot closer to God and just who He is, and what He says about who He is and about who I am and why I'm here and what this is all for. And because, at that time I was staying home and I just was so like, there has to be more than this. And there is. And that's, being a mom is just a piece of what God has for me. Yeah. So I don't know. Does that kind of help you answer your question?
I think that's helpful to a lot of people, because when we talk about our identity, it so easily gets wrapped up in what we do. I think with guys especially, it's your job, it's your work. I think with your situation, like family, you're being a mom, I get that those are things that everybody falls in the trap to at some point. Like we have our identity wrapped up in really the wrong things because we're focusing on the wrong things. But when you get back down to it, I mean, you believe that you are a child of God.
Yeah.
And that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. You've been made in His image, and that He calls you by name and you are His child. Or you believe that you are an accident and there is no significance. And honestly, I don't know how you live like that. I don't know how you grapple with the day-to-day ins and outs of life if there is nothing more than that that's holding you together. It seems so discouraging to me to have to live that way.
Yeah, it's kind of like funny the juxtaposition that we're talking about here, because we just showed a video a little while ago of a telescope that shows us the entire galaxy universe.
Yeah.
And you feel so small. You feel like this tiny little speck of dust as part of that, because it's like, I'm so insignificant. Look at all of this creation and I'm so insignificant. But the Bible tells us opposite of that.
Yes. Yeah. That's
just
exactly
like you said, that you're fearfully and wonderfully made, that you were knit together in your mother's womb. All of those things tell us that God thought about you
absolutely
on your own, by yourself, made you on purpose for a purpose. And you have significance in this world because He created you to be here.
Oh, that's so good.
That's incredible.
Well, even think about it. So if I were the only person on earth, like God would have done everything the same.
Yes.
Like I matter
that's
that much.
How
and
important you are.
And when and to the point with creation, God didn't create 100 people when He started.
No,
He
didn't.
created one. And that was it. And that's how important each of us are to Him.
Yeah.
Yes. And I want to encourage you. Honestly, that leads us to a perfect place to wrap this up. I think it's important for us to recognize that when we realize who we are, the origin that we have, that we are fearfully, wonderfully made, we are made in God's image, that we are His children. I think you have to make sure that is the foundation for your identity. That's the foundation for your purpose. That's the foundation for your hope. Yeah. And I think that if you have this faith in God, it has to drive you enough that you never forget the hope that you have because of that. God loves you so much. To your point, if you were the only person in the world, Kristen, God still would have spoken everything into existence that He did. He would have sent Jesus to die on the cross for you because that's how much He loves you. I mean, that's amazing. That's
amazing.
Been
a really great place.
You don't like everybody else around. Come on.
Just kidding.
And this reality is that as big as creation is, and as big as the creator God is that created all of that, He loves you with an extravagant love. He loves each and every one of us. He calls us by name. And so I just want to encourage you today that it might not seem like the place that you would think you would land in a conversation like this, but the reality is, when it comes to your origin, I think the challenge is we have to remember who we are. It's like it's in Lion King. Every time I say remember who you are, it always goes back to Lion King. Remember who you are. Was that James Earl Jones? May he rest in peace. Oh. That makes me sad now that I think about that. Yeah, but the reality is that was a really odd rabbit trail. The reality is, remember who you are. Man, you are a child of God, and when you put your trust in Him and you believe that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, that changes everything. You do. You have identity. You have purpose. You have hope. And never take that for granted. Always be ready to share that with others, because we are surrounded by people who are desperate for the hope that you have in Jesus. And so I would just encourage you as we come to a close today, remember who you are. You are a child of God. Anything to add to that, guys?
Can we get this place fumigated for stink bugs?
You've got my vote. I never want to be attacked by a stink bug ever again. If I see another one, it'll give me PTSD or something. It'll be terrible. It'll be terrible. At least we have a memory. If this episode was terrible for no other reason, people will remember it as the stink bug episode. That's fantastic. All right. Hey, as we wrap this up, that's the final idea. Remember who you are. You are dearly and deeply loved by the Creator God. And if you hear nothing else today, know this: you are loved. When it is time to make your move, be bold. We'll see you next time.